If you ever saw my Drawing All Protagonists video or the illustration that came from it, you might know that there is, technically, one main series protagonist that I left off of that drawing. It's a protagonist who was only in the spotlight for a few chapters of a single book, and is otherwise irrelevant to the rest of the arc and series, so it didn't seem fitting to include him. I'm of course talking about Flametail, the ShadowClan Medicine Cat apprentice who appears on both the original and reprinted cover of Night Whispers. Considering he has little to no connection to our other ThunderClan protagonists, hasn't been involved in the story, and isn't connected to the Dark Forest antagonists either, this makes me curious as to what impact he could possibly have on this new book. And I'll give a warning that, it's not really much. Enough that many fans forget almost everything that happens in his few chapters. But we'll get to that later. Night Whispers came out on November 23rd of 2010, exactly 8 months after the second book in this arc, Fading Echoes, 3.5 months after SkyClan's Destiny and the Heart of a Warrior, and 6 months after Battles of the Clans. The Hunter team took a little more time with this one than they have in a while, especially considering that no supplemental material was released alongside this book, and none would come out before the next entry of the main series. Did it help them to iron out the plot and character details? Is this going to be the surprise best book in Omen of the Stars? We'll see. In any case, like Fading Echoes, Night Whispers was written by Kate Carey, so we might be able to expect more consistency than usual from that wonderful previous entry, and hopefully the longer turnover time gave Kate a little more time to breathe and consider her writing. I'll keep the Allegiance check-in brief because there really aren't many changes this time around. Bumblestripe's name has been corrected since the mistake in the last book. Longtail is no longer in the Elder's Den since he died, so there are 2 Elders instead of 3. And in RiverClan, Misty Star is the leader instead of Leopard Star, and she chose Reed Whisker as her deputy. Otherwise, there are no changes, and ThunderClan still has the same 26 warriors as it did before. The statistics, however, are very interesting. The total speaking cast for this book is 101 cats, instantly beating the previous record of 82 total cats by a wide margin. This has the most packed cast of any book so far. Partially as a result, the top 10% of that cast only has 64% of the lines. Also, 47% of that cast are she-cats, and they get 47% of the lines. Acceptable, and about on par with our last count. And with that out of the way, let's get into the story. We open up, as we often do, in StarClan, this time with Yellowfang meeting someone named Sage Whisker. Apparently all of StarClan thinks Yellowfang should have stopped the war between ShadowClan and ThunderClan before Russetfur died. I would just point out that, contrary to popular belief, Yellowfang is not the only member of StarClan, and absolutely any of you could have spoken up to stop this at any time. Anyway, Bluestar defends her and mentions that it isn't just ShadowClan who is suffering. Sage Whisker suddenly seems more concerned about blaming Yellowfang, and really anyone but ShadowClan, for Broken Star than fixing the situation. This isn't a super flattering characterization for this brand new character, but I'm sure she'll only exist for this one book, so it should be fine. In the living world, the battle between ThunderClan and ShadowClan has only just ended, and a near-perfect copy of the final scene in Fading Echoes plays out as the first scene here. I say near-perfect because Brambleclaw says Thornclaw's exact line from that book, and no mention is made of the change. We then cut to Jayfeather, who is finishing his treatments of the last cats coming back from the battle. Briarlight is also developing a chest infection, and Lionblaze is still mad at himself for attacking Russetfur when she was so old. Both of them also take a moment to contemplate Dovepaw's mental state since the battle, and don't do anything about it. That night, Jayfeather also comes into Ivypaw's dreams accidentally, and realizes she's training in the Dark Forest. Cinderheart reaches out to Lionblaze to give him a chance to talk about Russetfur, and in the midst of this conversation, Lionblaze fiercely defends the warrior code with black and white terms very reminiscent of, well, his sister. But I don't think the book or Lionblaze realized that was what he was doing, considering no one points out how this would be in character for Hollyleaf and out of character for Lionblaze. However, Lionblaze and Cinderheart do bring up Holly in another way when they come across the blocked tunnel where she must lay dead somewhere. Lion also hopes internally that he and Cinder could be more than friends. Before they can engage in any productive conversation, though, the two arrive at the ShadowClan border to meet none other than Flametail, who is immediately confrontational. He says he wouldn't ever want to be kin with Lionblaze anymore. He wouldn't want to share the same blood as a murderer. Cinderheart tells Lionblaze not to give Flametail the reaction he's looking for, and Jayfeather pulls him aside to tell him what he's learned about Ivypaw. We then cut to the next chapter where they're leaving to have that conversation, confusing Dovepaw, who isn't a part of it. Firestar asks that Cinderheart and Lionblaze train their apprentices in hunting, as it is Leafbear, but with Lionblaze gone, Cinderheart instead takes both Dovepaw and Ivypaw, and they have some playful banter while out. Dovepaw also overhears Lion and Jay talking about Ivypaw in the Dark Forest, and Dovepaw is shocked, with no one around to process her emotions with. Guys, it really feels like it would be easier if you just talked to her about this directly when you know she can hear you from anywhere. Dovepaw goes off alone with her sister and confronts her, asking if she's really training in the Dark Forest. Ivypaw tries to deny it at first, but when presented with proof, she instead tries to justify it, saying that they're paying attention to her and making her a great warrior, unlike ThunderClan, who just considers her Dovepaw's dumb sister. It's worth noting that we don't have evidence that this actually happened. Cinderheart is a more reliable mentor to Ivypaw than Lionpaw to Dovepaw, neither sister really has any friends, and none of the warriors of ThunderClan treat them all that differently. The only thing making them different is that Dovepaw is sometimes better at hunting, but not by a wide margin, as she also spaces out a lot, and that, as far as Ivypaw knows, StarClan sent Dovepaw a dream and had her go on an all-clan mission without Ivypaw. What Ivypaw is telling Dovepaw here is not really based in truth, but in emotions of jealousy that have been inconsistently building in Ivypaw, and were specifically nourished by Hawkfrost, who, like Broken Star with Breezepelt, has been spinning a specific narrative to manipulate Ivypaw. Ivypaw admits to Dovepaw that Tigerstar was the one who told her to encourage the battle, and when Dovepaw tries to explain how scary this is, Ivypaw accuses Dovepaw of being jealous of her for once, since she was noticed by Firestar. She then runs away, leaving the sisters further apart than ever. While Jayfeather is helping Briarlight with her exercises and keeping her family at bay, Dovepaw comes in to demand that they help Ivypaw instead of treating her like an enemy. Jayfeather says they can't discuss this in public, and also decides not to tell Firestar for some reason before receiving a vision of ThunderClan being locked in a fearsome battle with the Dark Forest, while Ivypaw watches, unharmed. Spottedleaf comes in to apologize and say that she couldn't change anything. Then we arrive at our first Flametail chapter. He is a very warrior-like medicine cat, concerned with keeping borders strong, and with ThunderClan in particular being stuck up, stupid, and generally the worst. It's unclear how he got this perspective, considering he had to flee ShadowClan's own horrible decisions and spent a lot of time actively befriending ThunderClan and subverting Blackstar's agency as a leader, but it's who he is here. I do understand that Russet for dying changed things in ShadowClan, but this is too drastic and complete a change for it to be in response to the death of a deputy Flametail wasn't close to only 1 day ago in the timeline. Speaking of, ShadowClan is holding Russet for his vigil, and while Little Cloud is resting, Flametail wants to stew in his anger, which his clanmates approve of. Little Cloud is also a bit sick, and Flametail is still close with both of his littermates, Dawnpelt and Tigerheart, as well as his parents, Tawnypelt and Rowanclaw. The littermates are excited to have Rowanclaw as the new deputy, and, soon enough, leader, but Tawnypelt doesn't want them talking about that so soon after Russetfor's death. ShadowClan at large is all planning for how to heal, train, and plan so that they'll be able to take that strip of territory back from ThunderClan as soon as possible. More a matter of pride than practicality. Blackstar wants Little Cloud to go to the Moonpool to speak with StarClan about how to best prepare, but Flametail volunteers to go instead so the Elder Medicine Cat doesn't have to be out in the cold. In the Dark Forest, Ivypaw is meeting Tigerheart again, who asks about Dovepaw to see if she's okay. But Dovepaw is very much not up to talking about her sister right now. Mapleshade actually gets angry at and attacks Ivypaw at this point, but is told off by Hawkfrost and walks away reluctantly. This is a warning sign that the Dark Forest is not a safe place. Hawkfrost has Ivypaw tell him about the fight with Dovepaw and comforts her before introducing her to Snowtuft, Shredtail, and Sparrowfeather. Thistleclaw leads a training session with them, and Shredtail nearly blinds Ivypaw during an attack. This is a warning sign that the Dark Forest is not a safe place. Flametail visits the Moonpool and meets Sage Whisker from the prologue, who shows him a bunch of recent and past ShadowClan ancestors, all encircled by fire, that doesn't seem to bother them. Sage Whisker says this is the message, that StarClan has split into each clan and that ShadowClan, in life and death, must stand alone in order to survive. Flametail promises to remember this and protect his clan whatever it takes. This is a stupid idea, by the way, StarClan. Just putting it out there. Dovepaw hears Ivypaw whimpering in her sleep, guesses what's happening, and lies to cover for her when she finds out she's hurt. Dovepaw is then called out on a hunting patrol where, distracted over thoughts of her sister, she accidentally scares away some prey. The patrol opts to split up, and while on her own, Dovepaw meets Tigerheart by the border, having accidentally wandered onto his territory. Tigerheart takes it well, though, commiserating with her about how the frost seems to have killed all sense of everything. Dovepaw's narration begins expressing attraction, and Tigerheart impulsively asks to meet her that night. Now, Dovepaw herself spends the rest of this chapter watching some other cats live their lives and being excited to meet Tigerheart, but I need to slow down for a moment because this is also when an important and delicate conversation comes up. Millie and Jayfeather have gotten into an argument, because Millie is worried about Briarlight being pushed too hard, and Jayfeather is worried about what will happen if Briarlight isn't pushed. Millie protests that she's exhausted, Jayfeather says that's better than slowly suffocating in her nest, and Millie, trembling, asks if he's sure about that. Jayfeather gets angry and asks if she wants Briarlight to die, but Millie says she wants Briarlight to be healthy, running through the forest, hunting and fighting, taking joy in being a warrior. Jayfeather says that isn't going to happen, and Millie asks what the point is then. Jayfeather asks rhetorically if there is joy in simply being alive, and Millie just repeats the word joy under her breath as a question. Jayfeather says definitively that he won't give up on Briarlight, and Millie accuses him of prolonging her suffering. Leafpool then jumps in to defend Jayfeather and says Briarlight isn't in pain. Jayfeather makes sure of that. Millie replies that she's not getting any better, though, and when someone brings up Faith, she says that if StarClan had real power, they would heal Briarlight. If this had happened at her old home, her housefolk would have fixed her. Graystripe steps in to ask if that's what she really thinks, and Millie says she doesn't know what she thinks. She just sees her kit suffering, broken and helpless, struggling to get through each day, with death always close in her future. Graystripe tries to calm her. Briarlight comes in after hearing this, and Millie quickly returns to a state of denial, comforting Briarlight with the idea that she'll get better, and Millie will help her with the exercises every day. This is one of the only scenes in the series that I felt it was important to read almost word for word, because it is the wording that often gets lost in discussions here, as well as the pacing. Millie is undoubtedly panicking here, and she herself admits that she doesn't really know or believe exactly what she's saying, but she can't stand seeing her kit struggle so much just to stay alive every day, and she's looking for any possible out to this situation, from her two legs curing her injury, to Jayfeather's exercises healing her, to even StarClan magically helping. Considering she doesn't react with this much intensity before now, even when Jayfeather realized that Briarlight would never fully heal, it's safe to say that a large part of what's bringing Millie to this point is Briarlight's chest infection, and the reality of how close death is for her daughter at all times from here on out. This fear is extremely new for Millie, having previously lived as a house cat with healthcare. But even among mothers in the clans, most of them have only had to deal with their kits as either alive and injured or disabled, or dead. This in-between state where your kit is alive, but on the edge of death, and knowing that they will continue to be extremely susceptible to every illness for the rest of time, is a unique case among all those presented so far. And it's essentially telling Millie that her anxiety will never end. In that sense, Briarlight dying and being able to pray to her among their very present ancestors could, for a single horrible moment, feel like a better option for Millie. But it's also, even in this moment, clearly not what she would prefer. She wants more than anything for Briarlight to be healthy, but that's not an option. Additionally, Millie's level of distress being done in front of Briarlight and her comments that do stray into ableism are portrayed as wrong by the scene. Jayfeather, Leafpool, and Graystripe all provide counter-arguments and try to get her to calm down. The idea that disabled people are better off dead is not, at this point, one that the book is trying to put across. It's just a difficult situation, and Millie is saying some hurtful things as a result. With that said, from Briarlight or even Jayfeather's perspectives, it's also obvious why it would hurt to hear Millie say all of this. Jayfeather has been doing his absolute best to help Briarlight, focusing on the reality in front of him and giving her the best life he can. Briarlight has been working really hard to keep herself as healthy as she's able, and try to stay positive about the life she has. Millie's words, though not intended to hurt them, are telling them that all the work they've done is useless or even counterproductive, which is not okay. It goes without saying, but if you have a physical disability, mental disability, chronic illness, or otherwise, it doesn't mean you are less worthy of or less capable of a good life. You will always deserve to, and there will always be people who want you to live. But at this exact stage in the journey, I'm not upset with the portrayal of either Millie or Briarlight. I think it's realistic, and while some aspects of what is wrong with Millie's words could have been changed or made more clear, there isn't an overall ableist message coming across. Yet. Okay, back to the normal book stuff. Basically, Flametail tells Littlecloud about his dream. Littlecloud is very worried about the prospect of the clans and StarClan separating, and because of that, they ask him to keep it to himself for now and not tell Blackstar. That night, Dovepaw is waiting for Tigerheart, and while waiting, lets her mind wander over to WindClan and RiverClan, and ends up being startled by Tigerheart's actual approach. Tigerheart shows her to an old abandoned two-leg home that he used to visit with Flametail, and Dovepaw ends up accidentally saving him when she hears an extremely faint crack in the wood panel he was standing on. Tigerheart then begins to jokingly treat her like his hero. Dovepaw counters with joking demands that he start bringing her fresh prey, lining her nest with moss and picking the burrs from her pelt, and Tigerheart suddenly gets very serious, saying he would do that for her anyway. The joking was honestly a pretty cute moment, and gives an inkling of what it is they see in each other, even though it's definitely not enough yet. But it's very hard to forget at this point that Tigerheart has been the one suggesting all of the romance, and that Tigerheart is a warrior while Dovepaw is very much still an apprentice, and a relatively young one since not much time has passed in this arc yet. Dovepaw doesn't mind Tigerheart's behavior, and in fact keeps considering him friendly and attractive in her narration, but these two really don't feel like they're on equal footing yet. And because they didn't develop anything close to a friendship before this, it feels odd and uncomfortable for them to jump straight into romance territory. Anyway, they break up for the night, and as they're leaving, Tigerheart reacts to Dovepaw's mention of Ivypaw, but then brushes it off with another joking flirt about how Dovepaw is the only sister he cares about like this. On the topic of weird romances, Lionblaze spends most of a training session with Cinderheart and their apprentices, fawning over how strong, confident, smart, and brave Cinderheart is, and Cinderheart says she wants to have Lionblaze's kids. And I'll be honest, I don't really understand this relationship on either side. Lionblaze and Cinderheart have been friendly with each other, but nothing has deeply tied them together or shown me how they work together. Cinderheart showed her care for Lionblaze, reaching out to him and trying to comfort him briefly after Russetfur's death, but that was the first and only instance of her expressing her care in that way, and Lionblaze has never reached out to Cinderheart in return. In fact, the only cat I would count as having expressed that sort of care for Cinderheart is Jayfeather, and he was doing it because she was a patient that he had partially projected himself onto. Cinderheart has not had any consistent friends that cared about her personality and struggles. And yes, that includes Hollyleaf. They trained together and spent some time together, but in any series or real-life situation other than warriors, I would classify them as acquaintances based on the quantity and intimacy of their interactions. But, I don't know, maybe Lionblaze and Cinderheart will miraculously get much closer in the next books. For now, though, the conversation is over because they find some fox tracks, and Lionblaze decides to fight off an entire fox on his own. Firestar does ask him to wait a day, so that the clan could at least believe he came across it by accident. He brings Dovepaw along to help if anything goes wrong, but otherwise goes entirely on his own. Dovepaw points out that the other warriors still want to help their clan too, and it's sort of arrogant to assume that he knows better than all of them and should be the only one to fight because he can't get hurt. To Dovepaw, it feels like cheating, and considering how much flack she had from Ivypaw in the past for being able to hunt better and go on a full mission due to her powers, it makes sense why she would come to this conclusion. I actually think this would work better as a conflict if Dovepaw's powers were more consistently present as a part of her life and who she is, but right now we seem to go through long stretches in every book where the narrative seems to forget she has powers, and we haven't seen a lot about how they factor into her daily life. Regardless, Lionblaze does successfully drive off the fox, becoming exhausted and panicking Cinderheart due to the amount of fox blood all over him, but leaving with no wounds at all. While in the medicine den with Jayfeather, Lionblaze brings up Ivypaw, knowing Dovepaw is worried and asking if they should help get her out of the dark forest. Jayfeather says she's fine and they should leave her where she is so they can get more information from her. But not asking her to spy for them. Dovepaw reacted badly when they suggested that to her, and Ivypaw probably wouldn't do any better. That is not a good plan, Jayfeather. You're not setting yourself up for success here. Right now, both Dovepaw and Ivypaw will have perfectly valid reasons to dislike you and not want to work with you. Anyway, Cinderheart is very worried about Lionblaze, who tries to shrug her off so she doesn't see his lack of wounds, and eventually he decides to tell her the truth about his power and the prophecy. Cinderheart immediately says that they can't be together because he is much more special than her and runs away. This is not really justified in any way and seems to just exist for drama. I have no clue why she feels this way, and she doesn't explain herself. Cutting back to Briarlight time, she hasn't been eating, despite Millie's best efforts, and Jayfeather asks her to step out and leave the fresh kill with him so he can talk to Briarlight. As soon as Millie leaves, Jayfeather turns his tough love judgment on Briarlight, saying she can't fool him about her hunger, and demanding an explanation for why she's intentionally avoiding eating. Jayfeather unequivocally makes the point that the clan always has and always will care for its members, regardless of how useful they are to the clan, and she's no different. The clan cares for her because they believe she deserves it, and because caring for clanmates is what makes them warriors. Briarlight then quietly says she just wishes she could help them back. And Jayfeather says that if she doesn't think helping out the kits, which she has already been doing, is enough, then he can give her jobs to do in the medicine den, things that are her responsibility to keep clean and sorted. Briarlight has already been doing pieces of this before, and so it makes a lot of sense to make it more official to help her feel better. Keep in mind that this isn't being phrased as things Briarlight needs to do in order to be useful to the clan. Jayfeather has made it clear that she is worthy of life, love, and joy regardless of her physical capabilities. But Briarlight personally doesn't feel good about herself without being able to help the clanmates she loves who have done so much to help her. Again, I think this is a message that could be worded better to avoid some of the worse interpretations, but the book is not suggesting that Briarlight is unworthy as long as she can't work. Also, while looking through the stores, Jayfeather finds the tuft of Hollyleaf's fur that Leafpool had hidden there to hide the evidence of her murder. Then, in his dreams, Yellowfang comes to him and uses the fact that Lionblaze fought the fox alone as justification for the clans and StarClan splitting up more, and tells him that the three should only focus on ThunderClan. It turns out, at the Medicine Cat meeting, everyone is told the same, and no one is especially happy about it, but they all agree. For some reason, there's absolutely no benefit to splitting up your forces when a big imposing fighting threat is coming, and it isn't even as if StarClan or anyone else believes the trainees are only coming from one clan. There's just no reason StarClan would have decided this aside from keeping the story dramatic for another couple of books. Ivypaw, meanwhile, has caught on to Dovepaw leaving most nights and assumes that she's training out on her own to try and catch up to what Ivypaw has been able to do. But Ivypaw does some training with the Dark Forest cats, including Thistleclaw, who is known to be very rough on all the apprentices. This is a warning sign that the Dark Forest is not a safe place. They then do some water training, and Darkstripe nearly drowns Ivypaw before she and Hollowpaw manage to beat him back. Hawkfrost says he expected Darkstripe to do better. This is a warning sign that the Dark Forest is not a safe place. When Ivypaw wakes up, Dovepaw covers for her wounds with their mother, even hiding a thorn in her nest for Whitewing to explain why there was so much blood. Cinderheart then specifically reaches out to Ivypaw to ask if everything is okay, and help with the problems she is able to see, even telling her that it's okay to want to be a great warrior, but that they can work on getting better during the day. She doesn't need to train at night, which is Ivypaw's current excuse. Boy, this whole jealousy plotline sure would work a lot better if Ivypaw didn't have a caring mentor like this. Dovepaw is worried about Ivypaw and spends a moment with Purdy, who is trying to get Mousefur to eat despite her own grief over Longtail, before being called away by Jayfeather and Lionblaze. They tell her she needs to stop Ivypaw from coming back with wounds and giving away the whole situation, and Dovepaw gets angry that that's their priority instead of saving Ivypaw, and points out that she has been trying to keep Ivypaw's secret as best as she can. Jayfeather then shares the message he got from Yellowfang, that they need to work alone, and the three should only focus on ThunderClan. And soon after, Dovepaw is confronted by Ivypaw, who has found out about her meetings with Tigerheart and tells her that he is another member of the Dark Forest. In ShadowClan, Flametail elected not to attend the Half Moon meeting after what Sage Whisker told him, and lied to Little Cloud about it. The Elder Medicine Cat does not approve at all when he finds out. Little Cloud is getting sicker, so they stop arguing, but Flametail takes the moment to tell Blackstar about the message, that they must stand alone, against Little Cloud's wishes. Then, while out looking for Borge with Dawnpelt, Flametail gets a vision about Dawnpelt falling below some ice, and him having to save her. In ThunderClan, Sandstorm is coughing, and Lionblaze is performing his normal duties when he kills a thrush by the border that Breezepelt was chasing on his side, beginning a fierce and heated argument between the two of them and Crowfeather until Leafpool breaks it up, asking if he can stand seeing his sons fight like this. They start talking about how much or little they loved each other, and Nightcloud cuts in to order Crowfeather to get away from Leafpool, and then secondarily tell the ThunderClan cat she'll shred them if they come back. Sandstorm and Cherrykit both have white cough, and Mousefur is wheezing, though Jayfeather isn't sure if that part is from sickness, grief, or both. Thankfully, even in Leafbear, Rosepetal found some fresh yarrow just lying outside of camp. Leafpool also denies being the one to have collected it. Mothwing also appears, the only medicine cat in the clans to be ignoring StarClan's split-up message since she didn't receive it, but she gets into an argument with Jayfeather, who has agreed to StarClan's request. Jayfeather also sets up a guard around their herbs so Leafpool can't steal any away to help Little Cloud and ShadowClan. Dovepaw goes out to meet Tigerheart again, and their flirting is getting more overt. Tigerheart admits he can't stay long. Blackstar is sending out more patrols to look for herbs as well as prey, to help Little Cloud, who is very sick. Dovepaw says she wishes she could help, but Jayfeather has been keeping a guard on his herbs, even the ones he's growing himself, tansy and a bit of catmint. Dovepaw offers to steal some, seeing how desperate Tigerheart is, but he tells her he can't ask her to do that. However, when Dovepaw instead says she'll talk to Jayfeather for Tigerheart, he thanks her. Ivypaw then walks in on them, scorns them for their relationship, and nearly outs him as a Dark Forest cat, again, before a ShadowClan patrol comes by. And while Dovepaw hides, Ivypaw doesn't. Tigerheart says he was about to take her back so Blackstar could question her, and they proceed to take Ivypaw away. ThunderClan sends a patrol to try and get her back, but ShadowClan has decided to hold her hostage until ThunderClan gives them herbs for Little Cloud. They've heard that ThunderClan has some extra catmint. Dovepaw instantly believes that Tigerheart used her and is using her sister to get ThunderClan herbs, and feels awful. Ivypaw spends a chapter not getting along with anyone in ShadowClan, though they do take care of her to basic degrees. Near the end, Flametail bursts in to say he saw the darkness again and demands that ShadowClan prepare to fight. Ivypaw is brought home. Both she and Dovepaw keep quiet or lie about everything they know, and the gathering is held, where Firestar threatens Blackstar for kidnapping their apprentice for ransom. Dovepaw confronts Tigerheart about Ivypaw's capture, and he doesn't deny telling ShadowClan about the herb patch, only saying that Little Cloud was sick with green cough, so it was justified. Dovepaw sees where his loyalties lie and decides to stop seeing him. Ivypaw heads to the Dark Forest and sees Tigerstar training Tigerheart, taunting him for being soft and weak. He'll need to be ruthless if he wants to take down those ThunderClan weaklings like Lionblaze. And, okay, so Tigerstar, this is a really bad plan. If you want the Dark Forest to form an army, you need these different clanmates to be more dedicated to each other and less concerned about borders. This is a recipe to have everyone turn on you. And unsurprisingly, seeing that Tigerstar is actively encouraging war from multiple clans lets Ivypaw know that her own loyalties are misplaced. And if that wasn't enough, Mapleshade takes Ivypaw for private training and tries to drown her for the second time in this book. When Ivypaw wakes up, she tells Dovepaw she never wants to go to the Dark Forest again. Dovepaw asks Ivypaw if Tigerheart is really training there, and Ivypaw says it's true. But Tigerstar tricked him just like he tricked her. Dovepaw then takes Ivypaw to tell Jayfeather and Lionblaze about her experiences, and Jayfeather says this is good because now she can spy for them, ignoring Ivypaw's protests that she doesn't ever want to return. Lionblaze at least says they'll only do this if Ivypaw agrees, and Ivypaw runs off, with Dovepaw asking for a chance to talk to her alone. She tells her sister about her power, and why the two Toms want her information so badly, and Ivypaw concludes that this is why she has always been in Dovepaw's shadow. She's angry, terrified, and knows that Jayfeather and Lionblaze don't trust her, but she agrees to help. In Flametail's world, he has been having a dream about falling into darkness while cats scream in terror every time he has gone to sleep in the last moon. But he takes an afternoon off on Little Cloud's advice to play a game with Dawnpelt and some of the young warriors and apprentices. This game takes place on the iced-over lake, and during it, the ice breaks under Flametail and he crashes down into the freezing water, recognizing the scenario from his dreams. Suddenly, he senses Jayfeather near him, trying to pull him up, but some sort of ugly, hairless, scarred creature reaches towards him. It demands he not die here, and tugs him out of the water. Flametail drowns and dies. Flametail's death is announced in a meeting by Firestar, who says that Jayfeather tried to save him, but failed as he was too heavy. No cats are allowed to go out on the ice anymore, for any reason. In the Dark Forest, Ivypaw says Tigerheart might not come since he's sitting vigil for his brother, and Tigerstar shrugs and says it's one less life, he guesses. Again, buddy, this is an awful way to get anyone on your side. He brings her to a meeting where she sees a vast array of cats there, and Tigerstar announces to all of them that they are nearing the day where they'll invade the clans and destroy them and the warrior code, killing all of them. Brokenstar pulls Ivypaw out for his special mission and shows her Flametail, who is trying to make his way into StarClan. He asks her to kill the medicine cat to prove her loyalty as a Dark Forest warrior. In order to keep her cover, after much deliberation, Ivypaw does move to kill him. But Tigerheart comes in to stop her and make them spare Flametail's life. However, Ivypaw has proven her loyalty, and Tigerstar believes she will fight on their side when the time comes, which finishes off the book. Okay, I already went over some of what I wanted to say during the summary, but this book has a lot of important points to discuss within it. Let's start small with my final thoughts on Briarlight. As I said earlier, at this precise juncture, while I understand fully how this plotline and Millie's words and behavior could deeply hurt some readers, I don't see areas where the story portrays it as correct, and in fact, through Jayfeather, it does exactly the opposite. With Briarlight as she is, I think this was a good, if not the best, route to take with her character. There are definitely some things that Briarlight would not be able to do that she may have wanted to do. That is something that's going to sting no matter how caring your doctor or family is trying to be, or how many other things you are becoming better at. Briarlight in this book is a wonderful caretaker for the kittens, remarkably gifted in organization and herb identification without any training, soothing and compassionate even in the face of Jayfeather's usual grumpiness, and of course, extremely strong in her front legs and chest. She has a lot of strengths, but when you're looking at the things you plan to do and can't do anymore, it's hard to focus on those, which is why Jayfeather's choice to give her something to focus on and put her energy into worked so well for her. As I've been saying all along, I think the wording could be better in several places to avoid making disabled readers uncomfortable, but I overall consider this to be the single most moving aspect of the book. Okay, let's move on to some of the more shaky aspects. First of all, we have Dovepaw and Ivypaw, whose progress in their arcs and relationship is odd, honestly. Dovepaw wants Ivypaw to be safe and doesn't understand why she's putting herself in danger for cats she knows are evil. She is also meeting Tigerheart, seemingly because he's the only cat in her life who's offered camaraderie of any sort. Ivypaw has been manipulated into the false idea that Dovepaw is thought of as better than her by everyone, and is trying to justify her own place in the Dark Forest and as the cause of the ThunderClan-ShadowClan battle in order to remain superior to Dovepaw in this one way. However, neither of them ever speak about this directly, before or after Ivypaw's turn against the Dark Forest, which stops there from being notable vulnerability, reconciliation, and growth between the sisters. Even when Ivypaw realizes the Dark Forest is evil and Dovepaw has lost her faith in Tigerheart, they don't really speak on anything that led them to this point or change anything for the future. The narration gives us the feeling of a moment of connection, but doesn't give the actual dialogue to support it. You may have thought I was skipping over a few lines, but Dovepaw really does respond to Ivypaw saying she's never going to the Dark Forest again with, "So what about Tigerheart?" They don't even share what happened there, or what Dovepaw felt for Tigerheart, or anything. And of course, neither of them ever share information with anyone else in their lives either. I'll let you know that this is the closest we get throughout Omen of the Stars to a reconciliation to their main conflict, but as they have so little time to talk through their issues, and pass up on the opportunities when they do, it rings hollow. The Dark Forest itself is also a very strange element to this story, which is bad considering the core of the arc's plot hinges on it. As of this book, the Dark Forest is apparently a large and bustling place with many trainees who can all swap back and forth between mentors on a nightly basis, and many Dark Forest residents who train alongside the trainees, or apprentices as they're called. Their tactics through this involve overt cruelty, brutal fighting, barbs about weakness, and drumming in that the reason any of these trainees are doing this is because it will benefit their clans if they are stronger. They are no longer doing any work to justify themselves, explain away their crimes in life, or hide their evil in death, and just expect the trainees to turn to evil as they have with no convincing, even when they actively dismiss their feelings or try to kill them or their siblings directly in front of them. Then at the end, they declare that they will be invading, killing everyone around the lake, and destroying the warrior code. Okay, so this is not a good plan. At all. Every single trainee you have managed to bring in should now be running, and the idea that Ivypaw is the only one who would have possibly discovered their true nature at this point is laughable. They stood in front of groups of trainees and even the entire Dark Forest and said, "We are evil, we will kill you." Every trainee who willingly stays at this point is accepting overt evil. There is no more nuance or manipulation. In addition to that being a bad tactic for the Dark Forest and ruining the idea of clan cats secretly training to turn on their kind, it also ruins the very idea they just introduced, Ivypaw spying on them and reporting back to the three. There is no information left to spy on, nothing to discover. She knows that they are lying to trainees, sometimes, by telling them they're there in service of their clans. She knows most of the cats they have brought in. She knows they are specifically planning an invasion where they will kill as many cats as they can. And now she even knows that they believe they can kill StarClan cats, since they sent her after Flametail. What exactly is it that Jayfeather or Lionblaze believe Ivypaw can give them that makes her risking her life among known murderers every night justified? Well, the only remaining answer is that she would learn the exact list of trainees they have recruited. That didn't immediately leave when Tigerstar announced their plan to kill everyone, outright, in front of everyone. So we'll have to see if Ivypaw gives that information in the future. Lionblaze and Jayfeather already know about Tigerheart and Breezebelt, so it would have to be someone else. Speaking of Tigerheart, wow, I do not like where they took his character. First of all, obviously, the warrior going after an apprentice in an immediately romantic way and with no previous build-up, because they did not grow particularly close on the beaver journey, shockingly, is uncomfortable, and it will continue to be so in all cases this appears. But for Tigerheart in particular, flirting with Dovepaw constantly, considering them to be above the warrior code together, and then knowingly using her to kidnap her sister and get herbs for Little Cloud is an extremely jerk move. He justifies himself with the benevolent end goal as if that was his only choice, but nobody, it was not. Dovepaw had literally just offered to talk to Jayfeather about the herbs for you, and you had no reason to believe yet that Jayfeather would immediately refuse if asked by a clanmate. You just saw an opportunity to kidnap Dovepaw's sister and demand herbs for it, using Dovepaw's information, and took it. The power dynamics inherent in warrior-apprentice relationships are already uncomfortable, but when a warrior specifically exploits that dynamic, it becomes infuriating. I am happy, at this point, that Dovepaw decided to leave him after this, but I wish she had someone to talk about it with. And who would I expect her to talk about it with? Well, how about the cats who should be working with her as allies, Jayfeather and Lionblaze? Within their own chapters, with Jayfeather's work with Briarlight and Lionblaze's grief over Russetfur coming out in determination to take down a fox on his own and make use of his power for good, they can come across as sympathetic and even admirable. However, outside of those contexts, these two behave awfully for the whole run. Jayfeather constantly disregards Dovepaw and Ivypaw's feelings and knowingly uses them for whatever purposes he can, along with following blindly in StarClan's order to cut ThunderClan and the Three off from the other clans, and Lionblaze also frequently disregards Dovepaw's feelings and leaves her alone without warning, including when her own sister is involved in the thing he wants to discuss in private with Jayfeather. Hypothetically, these three are a trio, but they never treat Dovepaw like it, and it leads to the she-cat being even more isolated and unable to process her feelings than she would be otherwise, especially since they've sworn her to secrecy about the prophecy and powers that are a large part of her life. This isn't justified in any particular way, either. They aren't cutting her out because she reminds them of Hollyleaf or something. Actually, Hollyleaf's never mentioned outside of the first scene with Cinderheart. They just don't even think to include or listen to Dovepaw at all. I would hope at this halfway point in the story that they'd take the rest of the arc to grow and include her more, but, well, I'm not holding my breath. But we do have a fifth point of view for this book, don't we? How did Flametail do? Well, we didn't learn a whole lot about the ShadowClan cats or culture from his perspective, other than that ShadowClan doesn't like ThunderClan right now, so that's out. And his personality is wildly different from his apprentice one, without reason, and not especially exciting to see on its own. There's also no relationship he develops with Jayfeather, or even any conversation shared between the two, as I've seen a lot of people talk about since the book's release. Really, I would say his perspective added exactly 3 things to the book overall. First, it showed us the perspective of a cat who wants the clans to stay separate and hates another clan already. Second, it showed us Little Clat's illness and justified Tigerheart's actions from a ShadowClan perspective. And third, it showed us Flametail's death and the dreams leading up to it. And unfortunately, with all of these, I think they'd be better if seen from other perspectives. Jayfeather, whether or not he should be, is another medicine cat who is unequivocally agreeing to keep the clans separate in line with StarClan's message, to the point of asking the 3 to only fight for ThunderClan. Tigerheart's actions didn't really need justification, and Dovepaw could already tell how sick Little Clat was from her own camp, especially considering caring for other cats around the lake in trouble is something she has done multiple times in the past. And as for Flametail's death, I wholeheartedly believe it would be better from Jayfeather's perspective. Flametail is the one dying, yes, but he isn't the one making any choices or changing his views. His internal narration just slows down to become out of character as hypothermia sets in, and then he dies. His death was a matter of circumstance that he did nothing in particular to either bring in or prevent, and it didn't change his worldview. The one making a choice was Jayfeather, when it came down to whether he should save Flametail, maybe, and probably die himself, or save himself but let Flametail die. I would also argue this choice would be much more impactful if Jayfeather himself made it, instead of Rock making it for him, or if Jayfeather and Flametail had any sort of relationship before that point, but even as it is in the book, I would find it more compelling to see this scene from Jayfeather's point of view. So yeah, overall, I actually think Flametail's perspective is useless at best and counterproductive at worst. Between the lack of fun in reading from his obstinate, aggressive perspective, and the way that everything he does could be done better from other perspectives, it just feels like a waste of time that could be given to letting our real main characters grow and develop relationships with each other, the support and background casts, and the plot. Night Whispers is an oddity. A lot happens in it, a lot of plot is introduced, many intense character beats happen, and several years-long conversations in the fandom were started by moments this book brings up. However, very little of it actually progresses the plot of the arc in the direction Fading Echoes seem to be setting up. And now we seem to be heading off in a much less appealing direction, with StarClan splitting up, Flametail's death, the Dark Forest's overt evil, and Ivypaw's useless spying being set up as items that will take up some or most of future book time. It's not my least favorite book in the arc, or series by any means, and in particular, the Briarlight content is very moving. But it often feels like every aspect of this book could have soared so much higher if given a chance to align more with the original goals of the arc, and by allowing the characters to actually talk to each other, honestly, about their feelings and experiences, ever. But as we don't have any extra supplemental material to go into, maybe we'll get more of that sooner than we think. Sign of the Moon is up next, and I'm sure that will be a great book. But I'm sure I'll be able to talk more about that when we return for the next episode of our trip through time.